This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive20.
Wow. Just roll with it. Just roll with it. It's all good.
This is Tiny at Obsessive20 on Twitter.
And this is Mike, and you can find me at I am Mike White on Twitter.
This is ObsessiveViewer.com, the Obsessive Viewer podcast. Mike, I was kind of hoping that you would intentionally screw up to make fun of Tiny.
This is Moik.
This is Moik Tiny.
Moik with a Q.
Yeah. Jesus.
Moique. Moik.
There you go, Moik.
I like it.
I like it. Welcome to the Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show. Each episode, you can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com and find the blog version of the podcast at obsessiveviewer.com. And this week, we are talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe in honor of Age of Ultron coming out. How do you guys feel about, stuff and things?
It's, you'll see as we go. Okay. I have mixed feelings about it. If you're a longtime listener of this show, you know I'm an avid comic book reader. And I'm on a show called Obsessive Viewer, so I'm an avid movie watcher. And where the contact zones of those two genres, if you ask me, don't always meet up so successfully. And so that's one of the things we're going to talk about on this podcast today.
Nice, yeah. And to clarify,
I like the stuff, the things. I got some issues.
Nice. Tiny, what do you think of Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I effing love it, bro.
Nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm not a comic book reader, but I am an avid movie watcher.
Right.
So...
Nice.
So Mike thinks he's all special.
I'm
I don't think I'm special. I think I'm a big dork.
Which is awesome.
It is. I'm more in line with Tiny. And it's funny, and we'll cover this as we go into our discussions. And to clarify, we're only going to be covering the Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies this week, and then next week we'll pick up with Phase 2 and go on through to Age of Ultron. So Phase 1 is Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, and the Avengers. And we'll get to that in a moment, but first, I enjoy the movies. I think I'm more enamored with the way that the connected universe of the Marvel Cinematic Universe came together, and how it's being expanded upon through very, very a variety of different titles and expansions into other media.
Word.
Yeah. So, before we get started on Iron Man, I want to address that we're going to be covering the movies, but I want to talk just briefly. I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the first season and a half. I need to pick up the rest of the season 2. And it's fun. It's fun. I've talked about it previously on the episode, on the podcast. It's a lot of good set decoration for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's fine by me. And there's also Agent Carter and Daredevil. Agent Carter, I'm only like 5 episodes into out of the 8, or 4 episodes out of the 8, and it's okay. I'll talk about it probably in a potpourri later on, but it's
You built up to that so much, it's okay.
It's okay. Well, it's not quite as like set decorating or universe decorating as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is. Like, it isn't good background for it. It's just history, and it's kind of, the characters are not as strongly drawn as the characters in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Gotcha.
So maybe it'll get better in its second half. I've heard that it does.
By the way, have you guys heard the mild controversy about what Joss Whedon has said about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and his movies, and that it's kind of like out of canon, it's out of continuity, because in Ultron, it's not a spoiler, this has been out in the news, Agent Coulson is still dead in the movies.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I saw that he is dismayed that they brought back Coulson for the TV show.
Right.
I didn't know that they didn't connect it to
Yeah,
Age of
he has
Ultron.
not. He's not going to.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I'm curious.
I'm kind of glad about it.
Me
I
too.
kind of like that.
It's nice that he has the clout to kind of, not there's so much talk behind the scenes about filmmakers having to follow Marvel's formula and stuff like that. I'm talking about the rumors with Edgar Wright and Ant-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so nice to see that Joss Whedon has the clout to, not include some of Marvel's plans into Age of Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and really quickly about Daredevil, it just premiered. I haven't watched any of it. I don't think either of you guys have.
No.
I'll probably have it as a potpourri later in the summer. But our friends at The Nerds You're Looking For, they did a whole episode devoted to it. They actually took off work the day that it was released and binge watched it. So I'll put the link in the show notes as always. So
That's cool.
Yep.
Dedication.
yeah, oh yeah.
We're dedicated, though, because Matt is taking off work an hour early.
I am an hour and a half early on Thursday, so
Nice.
so that me and Tiny can see the double feature. We were going to go with Fecus. Sorry. We were going to go with Fecus, but I waited too long to buy my tickets and it sold out. So we're going to a different theater.
Yeah.
Mike, what are your plans for Age of Ultron?
I won't get to see it until Friday, actually.
Ooh.
And I'm a little embarrassed about it.
Sucks.
Yeah, we bought tickets forever ago to a Beatles tribute band, and their name escapes me right at the moment. But they're apparently the premier, I think, American Beatles tribute band in the country. They've been around for a long time. Like they're like the number one tribute band, and we're seeing them on Thursday. And I don't want to go to an 11 o'clock or a midnight show. I'm just kind of too old for that these days.
Yeah.
So I'll see it on the release date. I'll see it on May 1st. So
Nice. Well, that's cool.
Well, if you have to have a reason, that's a good one.
yeah, it's the Beatles, man.
Yeah, totes.
No offense, but that's such an old person thing to say. I can't go see this comic book movie because me and the wife are going to go see a Beatles tribute band.
We're going to see a Beatles tribute band, and I got to make sure I get to bed on time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I would do the same thing.
Yeah. It's the Beatles, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll be awesome. We watched, whatever. They're on the PBS station around here. They had them on, and we were like, man, that would be cool to go to. And they're basically advertising this show coming up, and so we decided to go to it. It's gonna be fun.
That's cool. I'm excited for you.
But Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes, let's get down to business.
Let's do it.
Yes.
For the uninitiated, if you don't mind, do you mind if I take a little backspin through the history?
Oh, please do.
Please.
And like I said, for the uninitiated, if you do know this, I don't mean to offend. It's kind of out there for people who do a little bit of digging. But if you're fresh to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, everybody knows Marvel Comics was invented a long time ago. Came around a lot of popularity early on. Characters like the X-Men and Spider-Man got incredibly popular. And then in the 90s, comics started to wane a little bit. And so they decided to start selling off the characters to different properties. Columbia Pictures and Sony bought Spider-Man. Fox bought Daredevil. They bought the X-Men and just several other properties went to several other homes because Marvel was just this small comic company. And so as time grew on, and movies, first of all, Blade made a little bit of money, but then X-Men came along, made a whole bunch of money. And then Spider-Man came along and changed the entire game. And Marvel was thinking, well, how do we get into this? Again, this was in 2002 when the first Spider-Man movie came out. And so Marvel was trying to figure out how to get into it. But of course they couldn't access some of the characters they had sold off. So they had this stable of characters left over, still some main players like Captain America and Hulk, which had mild success. And so they decided to make a movie, and it was announced that they would make Iron Man, who by all intents and purposes at the time was like a C-list character.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Right? Nobody cared about Iron Man back then. And there's kind of a misconception surrounding that because of the popularity of Iron Man today. People think he's, he was one of the original Avengers. He actually predates Captain America in the Avengers in the comics. But, So people think of him as the leader, and you know, because of Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, he kind of is the leader. I consider him the focal point of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. But to come out with an Iron Man movie in 2008 as Marvel's first property movie, Marvel Studios was pretty bold. They took a gamble there, and the gamble paid off a lot.
Yeah.
And so they decided early on that they are, much like their comics, they were going to, Kevin Feige is the kind of the head of decision making out there, decided that they were going to make it a Marvel Cinematic Universe, and over time hope to get back some of their characters. And so Matt, when you mentioned Daredevil, Fox's thumbprint over Daredevil kind of ran out, and so they got Daredevil back, and that's why we have a Marvel Daredevil show.
Wow.
It's also why there was such a quick turnaround, just again, for people who don't know, why there was such a quick turnaround with the Spider-Man movies after Spider-Man 3 for Amazing Spider-Man. They did that because they didn't want to have to let the character go back to Marvel. So
Right.
Marvel has had to deal with what they've got, and what they've got has turned out to be something special, which brings us to Iron Man 2008.
Oh yeah. Woo. Very well said, man. Very well said.
Yeah.
Thanks. I hope that wasn't too dense, and and on the flip side, I hope it wasn't too obvious. I hope it was new to some people.
I'm sure it will be.
I learned some things.
I did too.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Iron Man,
Yeah.
a C-list at best, maybe B level. So like in 2008, Spider-Man was just everywhere. Spider-Man was
yeah.
the character. People were excited about The Dark Knight, but it didn't really. Until the Dark Knight really didn't hit huge until The Dark Knight came out.
right, and plus it wasn't the comic book blockbuster that like Iron Man and Spider-Man were.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it was unconventional.
Right. And also it's coming off the least not the least successful, but the least critically praised X-Men movie. And so the popularity of the X-Men, despite the amazingness that is First Class and the pretty close to amazingness that is Days of Future Past, the popularity of X-Men has waned over time. And so like in 2008, it was like Spider-Man and X-Men were probably the two most popular superheroes, and they were kind of on the downfall.
Right.
And it was announced that Robert Downey Jr. would play Iron Man, which I love.
Oh yeah.
Well, so let's start talking about the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
He's so freaking perfect.
He
Yeah.
is. And when you view it in the context of, I mean, like, who was Robert Downey Jr. before Iron Man? He was a disgraced actor who went to prison for drugs and all that, or I don't know his actual criminal past or anything like that, but he was very much, you know,
He had burned out.
he had burned out. He was very much not, like, this was his resurgence. And I think that it surprised people just as much as, or it surprised him just as much as it surprised everyone else. Because, like you said, B/C level character in a Marvel movie that wasn't Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a huge risk, and man, he just embodied this character so well.
Yeah.
I've been going through the movies and slowly writing reviews. I'm obviously not going to get any of them posted by the time this episode gets out, but I'm hoping to just gradually get my reviews posted throughout the summer, maybe in the lead up to Ant-Man. But man, when rewatching Iron Man, the opening scene is so good, and it's so impressive that they basically introduced the hero of the movie, the main character of the movie, out of his element in the Afghani desert with a bunch of soldiers. And so it felt like kind of a risk to just kind of throw this character in that scenario, and then through dialogue just instantly tell the audience what kind of personality he is and what kind of reception his persona gets in the real world. And it's just in every line of dialogue that's between him and the soldiers is so on point with the characterization of Tony Stark. And then it's so brief, but in the way I phrase it in my review is when things get explodey, you immediately care about Tony Stark strictly because of those those pieces of dialogue and everything. It's just a really well constructed script in that opening scene.
Yeah,
totally. It sets the scene. It sets everything up, really, the entire franchise almost. But yeah, I know we're talking about the movie now, but again, just all the risks. We keep using that word. For the casting, obviously we talked about Robert Downey Jr., but then also Jeff Bridges. I mean, everyone knew who Jeff Bridges was, but Iron Man was like his first movie that was ever in like ever a top blockbuster.
Right.
And he was like in his 50s when the movie came
that's
out,
true.
You know? I mean, it was he really wasn't a movie star per se.
Yeah.
Well, you could talk about the cult following of
Lebowski.
like the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
It's probably the second biggest, but yeah, you said the word blockbuster. He never had a blockbuster, that's for sure.
Right. Was a big movie star.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Gwyneth Paltrow, I hadn't burnt out really, but you know, they could have gone with like, I don't know, they could have gone with like Scarlett Johansson or something.
Well, she was the biggest star for sure, but in a superhero movie?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the risk.
Right.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Jon Favreau. I mean, he directed Elf.
Right.
You know, it's like it's a very far cry from Iron Man.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, Marvel was just like they took every dice they had and rolled it, and it just amazingly came together into this movie.
Mm-hmm. I love that it's also the kickoff of getting, I don't want to say avant-garde and I don't want to say really left of center directors, but I love it's the start of a series of really good choices for directors. We won't see that, unfortunately we won't see that too much necessarily in this phase 1, but like the Avengers on, I love the choices they've made for directors. Just not who you would think, but like the perfect choices for.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like you would have guessed that Michael Bay would do the Avengers. You know,
Right.
that's the easy choice. That's the obvious choice.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting to me that they have it almost follows, and I think this comparison, I'm sure this comparison's been made, but it follows an interesting production like dynamic because it's almost not like it's a movie production. Like the whole universe, the whole cinematic universe is kind of follows this template of almost like a TV series. Like you have Kevin Feige or Feige. Feige. He's like the executive producer. He's the head of Marvel, and he has this encyclopedic knowledge of the universe and of the comics and all that stuff. So he's almost like the showrunner of the show or the franchise, as it were. And then all these different directors each bring their own sensibilities and their own taste to each movie, but they all follow that specific guideline. It's like a writer's room on a TV show where you have one showrunner who's in charge of everything, but everyone has their own voice and they all kind of pair off and work together, and then they put out scripts and stuff like that. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting approach to shared universe building and stuff like that. And it's interesting to note that Iron Man, especially Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, are the first two movies that came out here. And we won't talk about Incredible Hulk until we talk about Incredible Hulk, but they both came out in 2008. And they both came out within a couple months of each other. And you can really tell rewatching them that they were they're not really flying by the seat of their pants, but in terms of building a universe, you can tell that they kind of fell into this.
Oh, absolutely.
This idea.
It's let's try this at the end.
Oh yeah. And I don't know about you, Mike, and Tiny, I don't know if you remember this, but you and I watched Iron Man together after you had already seen it.
Uh-huh.
And when I'd heard whispers about Nick Fury and Samuel L. Jackson popping up at the end of Iron Man, and then I remember seeing it and then just going like, oh my God, that is so awesome. And then Tiny kind of gave me a rundown like, oh yeah, basically all these different movies are going to lead up to the Avengers, and then it's going to be a big team up movie. And I was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to cinema.
I remember being like, no way. They're not. They won't pull that off.
Can't do that.
4 years down the road. I saw it. I remember I saw it on a summer night. We made a big deal out of going out to see a movie all the time, and we saw this Iron Man. I think I want to say we did not do a double feature, but it was like we saw it the week after The Strangers came out, which was like my movie of the summer up until Iron Man.
Right.
I don't know. It was just so much fun. So my knowledge, if you guys don't mind, I guess I don't want to be that, like, I don't want to be the resident comic book nerd the whole time.
Okay.
Because Tiny will just keep making fun of me, but that is just kind of my area of focus. So
okay.
You'll have to forgive me. But my experience with Iron Man, again, he was such a low-level character that I didn't know a whole lot about him going into the movie. My biggest experience with Iron Man was from like summer 06 to 07, January. They did the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And so people talk about in Iron Man how perfect Robert Downey Jr. is for the character. And he's really like the witty, funny guy with the quips is not really the case as far as Civil War is concerned. So while I loved Robert Downey Jr. and I love his portrayal of it, I think it's a new Tony Stark. It's a better Tony Stark, but he's much more somber and much more serious in Civil War, at least in terms of what I remember. And so I remember liking it better because he was funnier in the movie.
Yeah, he was definitely very, very likable, and this kind of almost, I don't know. Should I bring in my issues with the movie, or should we kind of keep heaping praise on it?
No, go ahead.
Go for it.
Like, I don't know if we wanted to kind of expound on the plot a little more, or if we want to go into kind of gripes and discussion about it.
No, do it.
Okay, so
people have seen the movie. We are 7 years late on our review of Iron Man. So
exactly.
Right.
Let's it's time. The luster has faded.
Okay. Yeah, so when I first saw it, I mean, I was absolutely in love with it. Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic in it. He's amazing. The quips and all the tinkering and the origin story of him is so much fun to watch because of his charisma and his performance. And I will admit that after I saw it, I was very much floored by the idea of a team-up movie and a shared universe and everything like that. But now watching it in the context of knowing that I have all of this stuff ahead of me and just trying to view it as a standalone action movie, superhero movie, I kind of found some interesting issues, I guess, with it. Particularly with Obadiah Stane.
The villain.
And
That's the key. That's the key to a movie. The villain.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk more about this. We'll talk more about this here in a bit. But the villains in the Iron Man movies they always kind of seem a little problematic. And the first Iron Man for me is no different because it's Obadiah Stane, right? Stane. Yeah. He goes through the whole movie, and it's like it's presented as he's trying to get control of the company, and he's a power-hungry industrialist or whatever who's trying to usurp Tony's reign as the head of Stark Industries, and now that Tony's back, and he's getting he has this newfound sense of duty, and he wants to work on not giving weapons to people and all that stuff. So it's presented for about 3/4 of the movie. His motivation is strictly to gain control of the company. Staines is. And
right.
And it falls so flat to me because it's so, the absence of a centralized villain in this movie is really felt. And Robert Downey Jr. does such a fantastic job carrying, the sequence of events. Like, I heaped a lot of praise on the opening scene, but from there we get a flashback that fleshes out more backstory, which is fine, and then we get his time in the cave where he sets up and he escapes, which is fun, and it's thrilling, and we get a good action scene there. And then from there we get him tinkering and working through how to do this, and then finally, I mean, like, the villain presents his true, like, motivations and true nature and true villainy in the last, like, half hour of the movie, and it kind of just, it's so muddied, and it's so, it isn't cohesive in a way for me, and that was kind of just a bummer to see that, because I really do love this movie. It's just, it's kind of the storytelling is a little bit dodgy.
Well, it's the origin story problem.
Right. Oh yeah.
It's they got in a room and spent several hours coming up with an origin story, and then said, "Okay, this will work. It's close enough to the comic books, and Tony Stark is going to be a badass. Where do we go from here?"
Right.
And then they go, "Okay, let's make a list of all the best Iron Man villains. Ready, go."
Right.
That's what we're kind of spoiled with. The likes of Batman and Spider-Man, and even I don't really like Lex Luthor all that much, but to a lesser extent, in my opinion, Superman. These iconic heroes with such impressive, iconic. It was the word you were going to say. Yeah. Rogues galleries.
There you go.
Iron Man, Whiplash, I guess. Ironmonger, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Ultron, not even. Ultron is an Avengers villain.
Mandarin in his super racist depiction in the comics.
Yeah.
I agree. It is the origin story problem. It always ends up overshadowing that first villain, and it's true of a lot of these movies. Even like if you look at Batman Begins, which isn't even in the Marvel universe, Ra's al Ghul, in the context of that first movie, is sort of weak.
That's true.
A little bit. You don't until the third movie in Christopher Nolan's trilogy. You didn't really realize how pivotal he was.
Right.
But that first movie, he just seems kind of weak.
Yeah. That movie also benefits from having also Scarecrow and
that's
some other
true.
stuff. But I don't know. With Iron Man, it was kind of
they just end up being overshadowed.
Yeah, and it's
an ancillary.
Exactly, and that's kind of the problem. And another problem I had, if you guys don't mind me just jumping.
No, please.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Tiny, when we first saw this movie, I don't remember if you remember, or I don't know if you remember this, but you mentioned that she plays kind of just a damsel, and that's really what she is, and it's such a downer to me because it's not a very strong female character. Like there's the famous retort that Joss Whedon said, I think it was for press for maybe the Avengers or something, where someone was like, "Why do you keep writing strong female characters?" And he's like, "Because you keep asking me that question." And Iron Man is no different because you don't really get, like, she's just his love interest / soundboard for the audience for his self-destructive tendencies or his destructive persona. And it's just, and by the end of it, it's like she's involved with the plot as a damsel, and it's like, this is 2008. We don't really need the princess complex, I guess. But I mean, they got some good. They corrected it to an extent later in the franchise,
right?
I think.
Yeah.
Anything else about Iron Man? Should we move on? Do you guys have any final thoughts on the? Let's talk about the Stinger.
Yeah,
sure.
So Sam L. Jackson's cool. But yeah, that whole sequence, that little brief scene where it's really, really, I don't know, it's really, really badass. I mean, it sets up the continuity for the rest of the movies, and it whetted my appetite.
True.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome. I remember thinking it was amazing. They don't all live up.
Oh no,
I think we all are like waiting for that next unbelievable moment,
right?
And they're not all that unbelievable.
No.
Yeah.
So the second movie of Phase 1 came out a couple months after Iron Man. It's The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, and this is. Let's see. First of all, what do you guys think of The Incredible Hulk?
I liked it a lot the first time. I haven't liked it at all on subsequent viewings.
Really?
Yeah, really hard to watch.
Yeah, I liked it a lot the first time as well, and it did downgrade substantially in further viewings, but I still think it's a solid movie.
I'll tell you what I did like. They handled the CGI so well, particularly at the end, particularly the climactic fight scenes, that it's not too fast, that there are jarring cuts. It's not too hard to follow. I don't like movies that that are sometimes too hard to follow because of the editing,
Right.
which kind of makes up for just they didn't get what shot they wanted or whatever. So it's really successful in showing you everything you want to see, really showing you the Hulk and who's he fight? Abomination.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and it's let's circle back to the climax later, but
sure. Sorry to jump in.
No, you're fine. Something that struck me when I was rewatching this movie was that it solves the origin story problem pretty well. It just kind of contains everything. It does like kind of Spider-Man 2 kind of thing where the origin is played out over the credits, over the opening credits, and the movie is about Bruce Banner on the run while trying to find a cure, while trying to reconnect or reconnect and save his love interest, while also, you know, in this, it's interesting because this movie wasn't a response to Iron Man because they came out so close together and they were in production at the same time. But in many ways, it kind of improves upon some of the issues I had with Iron Man in that it's, like I said, the origin story is dispelled really quickly, really briefly. It doesn't become about the origin. It becomes about him trying to find his cure and everything.
And like you kind of said, we can't really give them credit on intentionally improving upon Iron Man. What they improved on was Ang Lee's Hulk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've still never seen it, but I've heard some horror stories.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I really liked about the opening credits was that it establishes the origin while also establishing that this isn't canon with Ang Lee's movie.
Right.
And its villains are established a lot better because you get without having to deal with the origin of how Bruce Banner became the Hulk, you get time to fill out Tim Roth's character and William Hurt's character as General Ross. And you kind of get they're both on the same side, but they're both equal. They're both independent. Their goals are independent from one another, and their growth is really well done in comparison to Jeff Bridges and Iron Man.
Yeah,
so I really appreciate that movie for that. This movie for that. What'd you guys think?
You know, I really I haven't seen the movie in a while, but just going through it in my head right now, it just reminds me how solid, and how fluid the story structure is. Because like I said, they didn't bother, because like you said, they didn't bother with the origin because they didn't need to. Everyone knows who the Hulk is, and the Ang Lee movie was not very good, but it was really popular. Like a lot of people went to see it because it looked really good. And so people know who he is. They didn't need to mess with that. And there are the two kind of villains, but like you said, they have these separate goals. And Tim Roth's character ends up, he kind of serves at the pleasure of General Ross, but he does so through his own greed.
Right.
And he just wants to be, he's power hungry. Yeah. And it's interesting to see how that influences William Hurt's character and how, I think he starts to kind of see the error of his ways towards the end.
Right.
That, the actual villain, the person who's the bigger problem is Abomination.
Right.
That he's the dark side of this science as opposed to Bruce Banner.
Right.
And that's just kind of a fun flip. You don't see that a lot. And this kind of feels like the first entry for the character. It kind of feels like the first entry of Hulk, but we don't really have the origin story problem.
Right.
It's a tight movie. It needed script work because there's next to no comedic relief in this movie.
Right.
There's some
very, very little.
There's like two or three, but they're pretty tame and just not that great. It could have used some polishing, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I wonder how much Edward Norton is kicking himself now because he was such a pain in the ass about all this. They just didn't even do a second one, and he could have been part of the Avengers, and he could have had 2 more Hulk movies and then 2 more Avengers movies. I mean, he could have. Is
he kicking himself?
I doubt he is, but he should be.
First of all,
he didn't do anything good with his time. I mean, right. After the Hulk, what did he do up until Birdman last year that was really good?
Yeah, I guess.
Good question.
Yeah, so I think maybe he
Not
just kicked
much.
himself. Yeah.
What do you guys think? Or Mike, do you want to go ahead and give your?
No, that we don't have to. I'll just
Okay.
kind of go along with you guys. I would ask, what do you guys think of? What do we think of Liv Tyler?
She's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's more the character, I think,
yeah.
than her. I think she's fine.
I
Okay.
don't really think I like her that much as an actress. She kind of plays. She's a little just bland in a lot of things I've seen her in. I haven't really been blown away by her performance in much of anything really.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think I kind of have a problem with Edward Norton. I really like him as an actor. He's a very strong actor. He's a very talented actor, but he just did not do it for me in The Incredible Hulk when I rewatched it this time. And part of that
Is this in light of how amazing Mark Ruffalo is?
partly.
Yeah.
But partly. And I think, and it's not because I'm watching The Incredible Hulk and thinking like, oh, I really want to see Mark Ruffalo, so it's continuity, and or I really want Mark Ruffalo's energy. It's that Edward Norton just doesn't seem to really care that much about the character, about the role. It's like he's just kind of, it's almost like he feels it's all, and I don't want to put like thoughts into his performance or anything, like his motivations into his performance or anything like that, but it kind of felt like he was just like, all right, this is the Incredible Hulk. This isn't Fight Club, or this isn't a big art movie for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just be this kind of mild-mannered guy who's trying to keep his heart rate down, and then all that. He doesn't really give a lot of energy here. It's and the character is a tough character to really grasp, because I mean there's a lot of the scenes where he's in an intense situation and trying to control his temper and everything. It's kind of, he's trying, like, it's like he has a duality to what he's supposed to be doing. Like, his attention's supposed to be on his heart rate, but he's also in an intense and adrenaline scenario where like guys are about to beat the shit out of him, or he's being chased by the military and all that. So it has to be like a divided attention kind of thing, but it's just like he just doesn't really give that much energy into that performance. And
what I think we've learned is that that's hard to sustain. I think the success of Mark Ruffalo is A, he's good.
Oh, yeah.
I think he might be better than Edward Norton.
I
But
agree.
B, Hulk works best in small doses. Right? Because that duality thing is only gripping for so long until you need another outside influence. You need some other source of tension, because you can't, yourself cannot be the villain for 90 minutes. Right. Although I guess Fight Club.
well,
Yeah.
It's a little
But you know what I mean?
Sure.
They in a superhero movie, we need something else.
right. Yeah. And I don't know. I agree. But he also the love interest story just with him and Liv Tyler, there wasn't a lot of chemistry there for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of, I don't know.
She's just a placeholder, really.
Yeah. This whole movie was kind of like, to me, it just felt like they could have done more, but they didn't, or they intentionally didn't really go as far as they could have with the characterization and the drama of the movie. They just wanted to make a kick-ass Hulk movie, and they did. Like, the action sequences are astonishing, but man, it just fell really flat for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But luckily, Iron Man 2, are we ready to move on to Iron Man 2, by the way?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Iron Man 2 came out 2 years after Iron Man and The Incredible Hulk. And how were you guys feeling about Iron Man 2 going into it? What were your expectations for it?
Oh man, that's a good question. Probably pretty high. What else came out in 2010? I mean, I think that was the feature summer movie, was it not?
Probably. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, I know my expectations were high because the first one was so good, and it was. I feel like The Incredible Hulk was sort of an afterthought, given it was an afterthought in the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and so I felt like Iron Man 2 was like the next entry.
It is. Yes, I see. I know exactly what you're saying. It's the next step in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I think in that context, they did a pretty decent job in this movie because we get Black Widow coming in, and she's pretty mysterious throughout the movie. And then in the third act, she goes full Black Widow and Natasha Romanoff and everything. And we have the wider introduction, I guess, of Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Mm-hmm.
That was all pretty exciting, but unfortunately, I think the rest of the movie just suffered for it. I think a lot of the movie was just in service to being the next step in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as opposed to being a quality entry of the saga of Tony Stark, I guess. Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of feel about it. And it was more just like, we have so much money, let's just do everything.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of how it felt. It felt a little Michael Bay-ish in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Explosions by Michael Bay.
Mike, what'd you think of it?
Samesies, really, for most of what he said. Again, I'm gonna say the first time I saw it, I wasn't disappointed. Mm-hmm. But just on just the second viewing, I was kind of disappointed. I think Mickey Rourke is, I don't know. Do I want to say underused? Because I think he's also a little overrated. He kind of bounced back with The Wrestler, which I think was more about the script and not so much his character or his performance. And so I think that he is not to be celebrated. He has a pretty cool couple of action sequences. I really love the racetrack scene, and I love Tony's suit in that scene. I also like the introduction of War Machine, and just when they use their little ultimate laser, or Tony uses his ultimate laser. That's a pretty cool scene. Mm-hmm. So there are cool little comic book vignette moments, but as a whole, it overall disappoints.
Yeah, definitely. I went into Iron Man 2 with really high hopes. I was everyone was back except for Terrence Howard, but Jon Favreau was back behind the camera. It was going to be, it's a follow up to one of my favorite comic book movies, and it was, like Tiny said, it was expanding upon the already established Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's worth noting that Iron Man 2 was the first movie in the universe to really dig its heels into the universe, because like we said, the Incredible Hulk's inclusion in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was like an afterthought. I mean, Tony Stark pops up at the end of that movie, and it just feels like, okay, they need some kind of connection to this new thing that we're gonna do. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and watch that scene between him and General Ross, talking about how he has a big problem, and Ross is like, you are a fan of your suits, and just like they're back and forth and stuff. It's never once paid off throughout the rest of the cinematic universe.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Let's remember. I urge people, especially my students, to consider the behind the scenes stuff, the money stuff that fanboys kind of don't think about when they're dreaming. When we make all these grand proclamations, what if this, what if that?
Right.
That when they added the stingers at the end of both Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, it was like with crossed fingers and a what if.
Absolutely.
Like, we'll see if Iron Man makes money. Of course it did. Right. And that's why we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all. And it's why we have the Avengers. But we cannot assume that they had 3 phases planned out in 2008, where I think a lot of young people assume.
Absolutely.
Right.
It was let's see what if. How cool would this be if?
Absolutely. And just really briefly, and while we're kind of on this topic of kind of not really stumbling into a cinematic universe, but crossing your fingers for a shared universe and stuff, just really briefly, I know this is off topic, but if you're listening to this and you're really interested in the behind the scenes stuff about this, I would suggest listening to the /Filmcast episode about Furious 7 and Fast 6 from last year or a couple years ago, because they review those movies in the framework of Universal having this kind of accidental universe that they keep calling back to throughout it. And it's really interesting to hear it discussed in that context. But anyway, so Iron Man 2.
Oh my God. I would love to do the Furious movies.
Oh my God.
I really think I would.
Oh, yes, we need to.
Matt just got hard.
I did.
I love the story. I love that they were on the brink of direct to DVD.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So we'll talk about that in the near
Another
future.
time.
Yeah.
MCU.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So Iron Man 2, so I went in with expectations that it would be really good, and I was just left disappointed. I mean, we'll talk about the birthday scene in a moment, but I just felt like there was just too much going on in this movie. I mean, I really loved that they brought back Samuel L. Jackson, and they really brought out some more interesting background on SHIELD and tied it to the plot more. But I mean, I really didn't feel like the stuff with Tony's little core thing poisoning his blood, I didn't think that was necessary. And Mike, you know, when I rewatched this movie recently, one thing that stood out to me was that, Mickey Rourke in Whiplash is criminally underused in this movie, and it's to the detriment of the movie itself, because the opening scene of the movie is Ivan Vanko working on his power source and making his electrified whip things. But by the end of the movie, I mean, what do we see of Whiplash? We get the one scene with him on the racetrack, and then he becomes contracted to Justin Hammer. He becomes a contractor for Stark's competing company, and it becomes this weird arms race, I guess, or something. And then we don't see Whiplash. Like Whiplash is established as having a vendetta against Tony Stark's father for something that he did to his father. And that hook for a motivation for a villain is very strong. Like, it could have been sustained throughout an entire movie, and had Whiplash been an adversary for Tony Stark throughout the movie, with that context of defending his father's memory and his father's honor and stuff like that, it could have created this really intense battle between the two, and that could have given Tony the cathartic history, or like the audience it could have given the audience the history of Tony's relationship with his father, while also providing the character with a catharsis for his relationship with his father. Instead, they threw in this blood toxicity level, like, that's literally like it's displayed on his blood toxicity level, which, I mean, I guess he's Tony Stark, he can have that, but it's just like, it's kind of a goofy little, like, his blood is being poisoned, and he's slowly going to die from it unless he can solve it. And then you have SHIELD babysitting him until he can find the solution. It's messy without needing to be messy.
Very true. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Do you think that Favreau was tired of making these movies halfway through this one?
No, I think I think what it is, to kind of encapsulate what Matt said and to address that, I think there was just too much pressure on this movie, and they tried to put too much into it. You know, they had to establish the first step or the next step of this cinematic universe. You had to develop the character of Tony Stark. You had to set up. I mean, there were two villains. There was a love story. You had to reestablish chemistry between two new actors, where, you know, Rhodey was played by Don Cheadle in this one,
right?
Which was unfortunate, but it's kind of an aspect of business you had to deal with, and stuff like this. There was just way too much going on, and I think I kind of wish another Marvel movie had come out in between them, because there was a year skipped where there was nothing, or maybe just another one in 2010, like maybe the Thor movie could have gotten bumped up, and they could have taken on some of the weight of what was put on the shoulders of this movie. I don't blame any one person for it, but I think it could have been substantially better if it were scaled back a lot.
That's true. And I think part of what Jon Favreau's problems with directing it, I guess, what I perceive as his problems with directing it, if you know, and this is purely conjecture, but if you look at the movie Chef, and how a big part of that is the the demand of his boss to make his food the way that he wants it to be made. If you use that as kind of maybe an allegory for Marvel, maybe Iron Man 2 wasn't the movie he wanted to make. Maybe he wanted to make a more character focused Tony Stark movie, but Marvel wanted to throw in the cinematic universe and Shield and Black Widow and
right.
Nick Fury, but because that's kind of how it feels to me. Because
that's absolutely what Chef is about.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
I think maybe Cowboys and Aliens as well.
Yeah,
might be part of that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it feels like they forced way too much responsibility onto Jon Favreau for this.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
But the birthday scene was unforgivable. I mean, I get it that the character is having an existential crisis, and he's worried that he's going to die, and it's what he believes is going to be his last birthday party. But like, this is one thing that I put in my review that I'll post eventually. The problem that I have most with the birthday party scene, which if you're listening and you're not familiar, it's the scene where Tony celebrates his birthday in his mansion with a bunch of people with a big party, but he's drunk in the Iron Man suit, and then he has a big blowout with Rhodey, and that's the introduction to War Machine and blah, blah, blah. But I think the problem, like the deep-rooted problem I have, is that it seems like it almost just breaks some unwritten rule, because you get, with Tony Stark in both Iron Man and Iron Man 2, you get this reckless, narcissistic person who is also carrying the sense of duty that is personified in the Iron Man suit, and he's discovering his nobility through Iron Man. But when in that scene, you have Tony Stark being Tony Stark in the Iron Man suit, and there's some kind of, like, in my mind, there's just this mental, like, clashing of, like, you can't have Tony Stark be Tony Stark in Iron Man, because Iron Man is Iron Man, and he's the personification of Tony Stark's noble side, and it's this mesh of stuff that just feels wrong, and it just really throws off the movie for me.
I mean, if you go with that, that's thrown away completely by the third one.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So I think that's I don't think that's accidental.
Yeah.
And I also think there's the idea that the suit is what keeps him alive. I think for maybe this is the start, or maybe I'm giving it more credit, but I think it's the start of establishing that Tony Stark is Iron Man. He, and he's nothing without Iron Man, where in the third one, of course, he realizes he is independent of Iron Man. But I don't think that's an accident. I think it's intentional that they are one and the same.
Okay, yeah. I just didn't like that he was, drunk in the suit. I thought it just kind of just felt off.
Well, but he's a drunkard in the comics. He's a drunk.
Yeah, he's more anti-heroic in the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just all, and it was all just it was such a throwaway scene.
Yeah.
It just didn't lead to anything, I don't think.
Oh yeah. And to go back to the climax of it and everything, and the problems with the villain that I had, was that you get this climactic showdown between Whiplash and the drones and Iron Man and War Machine, and the action in that scene just felt so flat to me because they completely abandoned Whiplash as a villain going after Tony because of his family history and all that. He just becomes this villain who just, worked with Hammer, and it's just there's stakes, but they're action movie stakes and not personal stakes. There's not an emotional stake in this fight. And it just really, the action's cool, but man, it didn't floor me the way that Iron Man battling Ironmonger at the end of Iron Man felt, because you knew the characters, you knew their motivations, you knew what it meant for them to be fighting through the city and all that. You didn't really get that in Iron Man 2.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, should we move on?
Yes.
Do it.
Okay, so Thor. Yeah, this one's different.
This will be tough for me because with me, the less said about Thor, the better. I think it's the low point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's definitely different. It's plays with the Norse mythology, and it's a different context of a superhero movie. I guess it's a different palette, a different aesthetic, and it's integral to Phase 1 because it introduces Loki, it introduces Thor, obviously, but it's something about it just didn't really resonate with me. It didn't really play well with me, and I can't really put my finger on it.
I agree, and I appreciate that it's something different. I think they needed something different. I think, normal guy also has a superpowered side is tough. They've already had 3 movies, and they know they're going that way with Captain America next. And so Thor came out, and they had to do something different. Of course, it's Norse mythology, so let's do a fantasy movie. The big problem I have with it is that it tries to be so many movies in one. It tries to be a superhero movie. It tries to be a man out of time, a man out of place movie, which is the most poorly executed of the types of movies in Thor. Specifically, I'm referring to how he comes down to Earth, and he meets Natalie Portman's character, and he's doing things like, "This is very good coffee, I'll have another," and smashes it down on the ground, which is funny, but then Natalie Portman says, "Hey, you can't do that," and boom, immediately he's acclimated to the customs and traditions of Earth. Like he's an Earthling in an instant.
Right.
That's
true.
No longer a source of tension.
Right. And yeah, it's the origin, or like the first entry in any kind of superhero type movie or story like this. You need to have the main character go through some change. And we get that in this movie, but it just doesn't seem very satisfying. Because in the beginning, Thor is incredibly arrogant and he's super entitled. And he's kind of a dick, basically. And then he really finds his humility, and that's it wasn't done real well, and it could have had a lot more depth to it. I think it was a great idea, but the execution was poor on it. I think that's what makes this so unsatisfying to me. Because I think the simplicity of it was a good choice. After the ridiculous complexity of Iron Man 2. This one was kind of refreshingly simple, but they should have tried harder with the character development as opposed to, the last movie.
Yeah, and rewatching it, this was of the Phase 1 movies that I've rewatched, which is all the Phase 1 movies, but rewatching this one, it was probably the most passive experience I had rewatching it. I was kind of just running out the clock, waiting for it to end, and I do appreciate them going a different direction, telling a different story, telling a different type of story and a different type of atmosphere, but I can't help but draw comparisons, and we'll talk about this next week, but draw comparisons to Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a different story and a different. It's a somewhat of a departure from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It establishes this whole new kind of backstory and this group of characters and everything, much like Thor does in creating a Norse superhero story, a Norse mythology superhero story that is not. It establishes the world of Asgard and all of these different worlds and like the Bifrost and all that stuff, but it just feels kind of sloppy. And like I've been talking about the opening scenes of these movies quite a bit throughout this episode, but the opening scene of Thor doesn't really play well with isn't as good as like Iron Man's opening and The Incredible Hulk, because it opens with him just crashing down to Earth and them almost running him over and meeting him. And then there's this extended backstory flashback where you get probably about half an hour's worth of story or like an entire, like the movie is established. The character dynamics are established in a half an hour. And then you're right back into this whole like, okay, he's been banished and this is what the movie's about. They waste a lot of time with establishing the hierarchy of the kingdom and of Asgard's rules and stuff like that. And it's just kind of, just a slog through it, and it's unfortunate because I feel like in a different context, this Thor could have been a lot more palatable for me. And apparently Marvel really likes it because they've got Thor the Dark World, and then they're gonna have Thor Ragnarok in like 2017. But it's just,
can I just say I don't get the Thor thing. I don't get it. I never have, and so that was kind of a detriment going into this movie for me. Was I just don't get it. I don't get that. So like Thor and all of these gods existed already. Why did we stop believing in them? I don't understand. There are heavier implications to the existence of these gods than are given credit to. Are they just aliens? Are they not actually the gods we're thinking of? Did they come back a long time ago and people wrote about them as gods, but then they consider themselves gods? I don't know. I don't like, and I don't mean to jump the gun on this, but the line in Captain America when Avengers where Captain America says, "There's only one God I know of, and he doesn't dress like that." It's like, well, why? If this God really exists, Thor really exists, then that's the one, right?
Right.
That's true, and it all depends on how it's marketed or how it's presented to the population in this universe. I mean, they don't really go into how people deal with like the fact that a Norse piece of like Norse mythology is real world stuff or alternate dimensions.
Everything
stuff like that.
Is wrong now.
Yeah, but the problem is it's not like I could do a mental I could fix the plot, or I could fix this problem in my head mentally by saying like, okay, well maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. orchestrated things, so it's like, okay, yeah, he's an alien. They've established that aliens are coming down to Earth and destroying things. Like they can say like, okay, well maybe it's aliens and stuff like that. But I mean, in Thor the Dark World, people are like, oh, it's Thor, and it's like, okay, so they know that it's Thor. They know that Thor is Thor, and
right.
I don't know.
I can't get into Thor because of that.
Yeah,
and I mean that doesn't bother me because I think it's clear they're just aliens, and when they came to Earth, however many years ago, the Norse mythology, the Norsemen thought of them as gods, and
okay, that's fair.
Incorrectly interpreted their power as godlike, as opposed to just another being of our physical universe that we exist in.
Right. I actually think that they say that.
He kind of does. I mean, in Avengers, when they're having the whole spat about, why are you building weapons of mass destruction? He kind of points at Thor and says, because of him, we found out that we're not alone.
That's right. Yeah,
which is more of an alien type statement.
Yeah, it is. That's a good point. So. Well put.
Yeah.
You just solved it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you solved religion.
Listen to the secular perspective.
Yes, please do.
No, but and I never had those hang-ups, really. I mean, they were kind of in the back of my mind, but I never let them affect my judgment of the movies. I just thought that the movie Thor itself was just weak. I mean, even down to like the climactic battle. It's just like when I was rewatching it, and this is gonna sound kind of snarky and all that, but when I was watching it, there's the battle with Thor and his buddies, in like this little desert town with the big monster that or machine or whatever that looks that Bryan Singer got a lot of crap for making the Sentinels in Days of Future Past look like it, but
right.
But anyway, so they have this big battle and it's where he gets the hammer back, and he's it's his big triumphant thing, and then after that's resolved and everything, he goes back to Asgard and then has a completely other climactic battle with his brother, and it's kind of like, okay, I just kind of really want this movie to be over with now. I don't know, and I think I connected more to I guess this could be a bright side to the movie, or this could be a positive note about it, but I connected more to its connectivity to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Marvel Cinematic Universe more than I did with the origin story of Thor and the backstory of Thor and Loki and Odin and all that.
There is the scene where Thor is at the compound trying to get his hammer, Mjolnir, and I remember there are guards around and they're starting to drop, and I remember saying, "Oh my God, if this is Hawkeye, I'll shit myself." I turned to my friend Jake when we saw that. Fortunately, I didn't have to shit myself, but I should have, to hold up my end of the bargain, because it was Hawkeye, and I just thought that was awesome. It was it was a pleasant Easter egg that hadn't been spoiled for me yet.
Yeah, I was floored by that, knowing that he is. I don't know much about the source material, but I just know that he's an important figure in the Avengers and all that stuff. And when I saw him pop up, I was like, that's great fan service that they're paying in the scene.
Yeah.
One note about this, like, we talk about the eclectivity. Is that a word? Eclecticity? Eclectiveness of the choice of directors for each one. Kenneth Branagh? Is that his name?
Kenneth Branagh.
Branagh. He directed Thor, and I think he did an alright job. Like, the Asgard scenes are beautiful, but there's one thing that he did that was just way overused. It was this slanted angle framed kind of thing to kind of make it look like panels
facing up at a character.
Yeah, or sideways even. Like, not completely 90-degree sideways or anything, but just kind of like slightly like a 40-degree angle in the frame, or it's just like it's a skewed angle for a lot of scenes. Like, it was very prominent in the scene where Coulson is interrogating Thor in the compound, and Loki appears and all that. It's like every shot is like from a different angle, and it's just like, it's kind of like it's trying to create this comic book-esque panel viewpoint for the audience, but it was like, I would upon rewatching it and knowing to look for it and everything, and knowing that that's what they were going for, I would go so far as to compare it to J.J. Abrams' his lens flares in Star Trek. Gotcha. It was like that kind of in your face.
Have you seen any of Kenneth Branagh's other movies? It's mostly like Shakespeare stuff that nobody ever saw. But there's also Frankenstein. Did you see Frankenstein? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with De Niro.
I never did.
I saw.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Very stylized. Very stylized.
Okay. Huh.
I mean, don't bother. I'm not recommending, but
right.
I can kind of see, like, I see what you're talking about. I don't remember that particular trick in Frankenstein, but I remember it being incredibly stylized and thinking this is a little strange for a Frankenstein.
Right.
I remember thinking, this looks like a Marvel movie.
Nice. So I mean, maybe Thor Ragnarok will be good.
Who knows? He's due for a good movie.
Yeah. Should we close the book on Thor and move on to Captain America, the First Avenger?
Close it.
All right. So
let me start with the title of this movie. I am really bothered with the subtitle, The First Avenger, on two levels.
Really?
First of all, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he approaches Iron Man first. And if we're not considering Nick Fury the first Avenger, then Iron Man is the first Avenger.
Okay.
According to the comic books, Captain America was not even one of the first few Avengers. There is Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, the Wasp, and Hank Pym. And that was it. And then they got Captain America later and eventually made him an honorary founder. But he is not, by any means, the first Avenger. And it is a blatant misnomer and a cash grab title, if you ask me.
Totally.
My God. No,
well,
that never... Well, just real briefly, that never bothered me because I just saw it as, chronologically, he was alive before everyone else. So he's like the first Avenger.
That's what they're hinting on, right?
Yeah, that's I never had a problem with that.
And he was the first iteration of the government establishing a system for a superhero.
He was
and
the first super soldier serum thing.
So that, I think in the context of this movie franchise, it's still kind of silly, but I see where they got that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I agree with you though, because he's not. Yeah.
As a quick side note before we jump into Captain America, Mike, what do you think about the rumors of Spider-Man's movie title being Spider-Man: The New Avenger?
Oh, fake! I don't believe it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Yeah, I
don't know. Is that fair? Can I do that?
No. Go right ahead, because it's.
I think that's a stupid title, and if they're serious about it, they'll get wise quickly.
Yeah, I don't like that. It's. I just don't like that it's rumors. I don't like the rumor mill. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Captain America: The First Avenger. What do you guys think about it?
I think that Chris Evans is so beefed in this movie that although the skinny Chris Evans, the skinny Steve Rogers is the CGI version, he is so beefy when he comes out of the serum container that his body looks like CGI.
Yeah.
His actual real body is so amazing that looks like the CGI version. I can't look away. I just want to pause that scene and be like, holy just everything. Like actors get huge in movies and they'll their arms will be big, or they'll get a really big chest, or like this character will have crazy abs. Like we flipped out about what what's his face looked like in Guardians of the Galaxy. And he was ripped by all means, but Captain America, it looked like they gave Chris Evans a super soldier serum. It's ridiculous.
His body is flawless.
It's flawless. Just huge and shaped perfectly like a stone sculpture.
Yes.
It's insane. I completely agree. And it's I mean, it's...
And him while we're at it.
Right.
Yeah. Also, do you remember Not Another Teen Movie?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, good for him for, taking on that role and working toward it so hard, but
yeah.
My God, he's ridiculous.
Yes.
But the movie itself.
So moving on to the I'm kidding.
It's worth something that stuck out to me when rewatching it was, and I had an interesting piece of my naivete kind of come to light after this, because I wasn't aware that the director Joe Johnston, that he came from ILM and worked on Star Wars and the sequels and stuff. So I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that Joe Johnston had anything to do with ILM or Star Wars or anything like that. And while watching Captain America, I thought, man, this feels like they're paying just some really heavy homage to Star Wars. Like there's extended chase scenes through like a forest area, and it feels so much like the you guys are gonna have to help me with this, the speeder chases through
Shut up.
Endor.
Yes, the speeders on Endor.
Yeah, I swear to God, I was not being joking about that. I wanted to make sure I got it right. But and then the scene
the moon of Endor, whatever that means.
The forest moon of Endor. So that felt just so much like there were scenes that felt just so much like that visually and the way it was photographed and everything. And then there were scenes where Captain America is fighting his way through corridors that felt a lot like the beginning of Star Wars and stuff like that. And I just thought this is really cool. Obviously the director is a real big fan of Star Wars, and it's pretty cool. It's a little on the nose, but it's cool. And then I found out that, I mean, he was according to trivia, and I may be getting it wrong, but he was the one that turned in the final designs for Jabba the Hutt and Yoda. So he was pretty steep into it. There's a story in his trivia page where he worked with Industrial Light and Magic, and he worked on the Star Wars movies, and he kind of became close with George Lucas, and then he would work on the visual effects while George Lucas was editing, and he would see George Lucas editing, and then he kind of decided like, oh, I would love to go to, I want to start film, like, directing and stuff like that. And there was, from what it sounded like, there was a bit of a, mentor-mentee kind of relationship. So Joe Johnston in like 84 decided to take a year off and go travel with money he'd saved up. And George Lucas, and this is all from IMDb trivia, so I don't know how much truth there is to it, but George Lucas was like, no, you need to enroll in my alma mater film school and all that. I'll pay for your tuition and give you, like, you know, I'll get you in to this film school or give you a leg up to getting into it. And Joe Johnston was like, well, I can't really pass that up. So that's how he got his start in the film industry, I guess, as a director and everything. So I thought that was interesting. And it really comes through in Captain America, the First Avenger. And I enjoy Captain America more than Thor, probably. But
yeah, only by a little, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know. I appreciate them much like I appreciate, to an extent, Thor going to a different area or a different world and like kind of striking out in a different universe, even if you would call it that. I appreciate Captain America for diving into kind of the lore, the history, and going back and to a different era.
Mm-hmm.
But something about it just kind of falls flat for me. I don't know. It's a pivotal movie in the franchise. I mean, you get the introduction to the Tesseract and the introduction of Zolar.
Armin Zola?
Zola, yeah.
Armin Zola?
Yeah, well, he comes back in The Winter Soldier, but yeah. I thought it was interesting that his first appearance in the movie, knowing how his character reappears and how his character is...
Especially Arnim okay. Zola.
And how his character is in the comics, like what his character is in the comics. His first scene in Captain America, you see him through like a magnifying glass that looks like a screen. I thought that was pretty cool.
Huh.
Yeah. Like that's the first you ever see of him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of a cool little trickery.
Yeah.
And Easter egg. But time was that I would kind of go between Thor and Captain America, and it would interchange which one I liked more. But I definitely got to give the edge to Captain America, if only for Chris Evans' chiseled body. Bastard.
This is the low point of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for me.
Really?
Yeah, I dislike it less than Thor. I dislike it more than Thor.
Wow.
Yeah, it just felt too much like a cartoon to me, especially Red Skull, the villain. He was just so uninteresting and just uninspired and looked like someone drew him with a crayon. I really didn't care for him at all. I'll give it credit for the character stuff. I liked how, Steve Rogers. I liked the evolution of Steve Rogers. You know, they packed a lot into that character for this first movie. It was pretty good in that respect. But just they threw it back to World War II, the war era. But it just didn't feel like it to me because I think that it just had this weird polished filter on everything, and it didn't feel like a gritty interpretation of World War II to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was all this ridiculous technology that was just I couldn't get behind, all like the laser cannons that all the Red Skull's guys used, and the ridiculous car that was like 70 feet long that Red Skull, the inexplicably huge car. I just, it was just so dumb. Everything was so over the top and ridiculous that I just couldn't get behind it.
He was overcompensating.
Yeah, he was.
Of course.
Yeah. And
I don't know. It's hard for me to choose which one I dislike more. They're pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Having seen them and having them fresh in my mind again, I mean, I don't hate them. I don't think that they, in the context of this massive Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're passable to the point of even being average, but on their own as standalone movies, they don't really function nearly as well as other entries in the franchise, and that's a problem. So
word,
agreed.
But I mean, they improved upon it for the sequel, so we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I'll say it now. I don't care. Spoiler alert! It is my favorite by far, my favorite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, just some of the whispers and reviews of Avengers, I don't think that's going to change. I think Winter Soldier is still going to be my favorite.
Nice. Yeah, it's tough shoes to fill.
Yep.
So finally, we're running super long, by the way.
Yeah.
But finally, we're at The Avengers 2012. Massive hype surrounding this movie. And I mean, just years of 4 years. And it's funny because the first movie came out in 2008, Iron Man, and then 2012. It doesn't feel like it was 4 years for me. Yeah, 4 years.
Like a lot, like it
feels a lot longer.
It did, yeah.
Like the wait for it, and I think part of that was like I was, like you said, Mike, I was nervous.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how they would pull it off. I wanted them to pull it off, and my God, did they pull it off? What a fun movie.
They absolutely do.
They brought in Joss Whedon to write the script and to direct it, and that was just a great choice in terms of even just getting fans to, quell their fears, because he's, a respected kind of nerd-centric persona, I guess, in the industry. And it was presented in a way that you knew that he would be very delicate with it, or it felt like he would be delicate with it, because he knows this world, or he knows the world of the fans. He knows about like hardcore fans and how committed they are. So you went in with the expectation that he would handle this with respect to the fan base. And I think that's really what this movie needed more than anything, was that it would be handled with respect. And I think that he did very well in that regard.
Let me say that while he understands fans, right, the idea of fans and fandom, I don't think he necessarily understands Marvel all the way. And one of my complaints, and there aren't many, I do love this movie, but let's be critics here. Yeah. The other movies do such a better job at giving us Easter eggs, little hints of this and that, stuff that came before and stuff that came after. There is virtually none in the Avengers.
Sure, that's true. And I know that was one of, like, that you've mentioned that's one of your
I have
issues
said that,
with
yeah.
it. And it's I agree, and as someone who's just not really is not plugged into the comic book world, that didn't bother me, but I can definitely see and respect how that would bother you.
Even and I'm not going to say Thor is better than the Avengers, please. But when we see Hawkeye shooting arrows and Thor, really elevates that movie for me.
No. Being a massive team-up movie like this, and obviously having not a lot of spare screen time, competing with four different leading characters plus supporting characters who are at times even more important or just as important throughout it. Do you think that there was room for Easter eggs?
I think there has to be. I think there has to be room for Easter eggs. I think this is that type of movie.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it didn't bother me that there weren't Easter eggs in it, because I feel like before this, we didn't really, we didn't know about, at least I didn't really know about Guardians of the Galaxy yet, and how much they're expanding the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
And so I feel like everything that could have been, most of the things that could have been referenced in an Easter egg were already in the movie. Like all the characters were together and all that. I mean, they could have referenced the Infinity Gauntlet and all that stuff, which they did at the end.
And yeah, they might have. They kind of did at the end. I also think Loki's staff is one of the gems.
They could have Easter egged it a little better as opposed to being right on the nose with it.
But just character names and like when we see in Iron Man 2 that they're making the the Shield, Captain America's Shield.
Right. That's true.
I don't know. Let's not spend too much time on this, really, because
really briefly, but and we can move on after this point. But do you think that this was really the movie for? I mean, okay, I understand. Yes, this is the movie. You feel like this is the movie for Easter eggs and all that. But I mean, I feel like this is the team up movie that the franchise has been building toward. And I mean, I feel like it would be almost not necessarily a disservice, but it would be kind of clumsy and maybe a little cocky to have like okay, in Iron Man 2 you referenced Tony picks up Coulson picks up the shield and
right.
He's like, oh, that's exactly what I need. That's exactly what I need, and he just uses it to lift up something. Like, that's great. And then like you said with Hawkeye and Thor, and also stuff like that. But the Avengers was like the big movie for these. Like, this is what these 5 movies were leading up to. And I feel like if they were to say like, okay, well, here's the Avengers kicking ass and teaming up and all that stuff, but we think that, you know, Steve Rogers' buddy might be coming back later, or there's this guy Mandarin who's kind of making waves and stuff like that. Like, do you mean Easter eggs for comic book fans, or do you mean like Easter eggs for future installments? I think that's.
I mean, for comic book fans.
Okay.
I mean, like in Captain America when they mention Doctor Strange. And it's tough to say because, of course, we know that they're now making a Doctor Strange movie. But just like, you know, that Crossbones is in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. There's no plans for a Crossbones movie, and Crossbones will not be. We know that. What's his name? Anyway, we know the villain in Civil War now. They just announced it today, and I can't remember his name. It's got the purple mask on, Baron something. I don't know. It's frustrating. And I'm sure whoever knows is listening to this saying, it's Baron, you idiot, but whatever. But just those little men, like Crossbones was in the Winter Soldier. There's none of that in Avengers. Not a one. I can
see where you see where it come from. But let's talk about the movie itself. First of all, let's talk about Mark Ruffalo. We kind of hinted at him, but our Incredible Hulk conversation got dominated by Edward Norton, reasonably so. There's something about Ruffalo's performance. Like, I mentioned that Edward Norton was kind of boring and kind of just dry throughout it, and it felt like he was playing this calm guy who is just trying to be a constant calm, where Mark Ruffalo really brought much more to this role because he's calm and everything, but you know, you can feel that he's a constant ticking time bomb, and there's like a little quaver in his voice, I guess, that he sustains throughout the movie that just makes me feel like really on edge whenever he's around, and also makes me respect his performance a hell of a lot.
It feels like everything that he's saying and everything that he's doing is taking a back seat or is put automatically to the back of his mind, because what has to be at the forefront of his mind all the time is controlling his emotions and anger and all that.
Absolutely.
And you can just feel it in his performance. And I think, you know, I'll give some credit to the writers, because I think that's part of it as well. But yeah, his performance just blows every other Hulk every other Bruce Banner out of the water, in my opinion.
And he plays it almost like he's distracted, but he's in complete control because he needs to be.
Right.
But Mike, what do you think?
Agreed. Yeah, Mark Ruffalo's awesome. I don't know. Not much else to say. Yeah, I agree.
I would love to see them give him a movie or maybe a short season of TV if it's done right. I don't know. I would love to see something Ruffalo Incredible Hulk in its own thing.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't know when or if that'll ever happen.
Right.
But the Avengers, to me, this was kind of after the Avengers or throughout the Avengers. I was like, Loki's a lot of fun. I really like Loki, but I kind of want, I'll be glad when he's done. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about Thor: The Dark World next week. But I don't know. There was a kind of as much fun as the Avengers was, which, my God, the script is just so much fun.
Yeah.
And seeing these characters interact is just so much fun. But there's a lack of coherence to me in the build up to the climax. Like the what are they called? The Chitauri. There's like one scene of dialogue with Loki and Thanos' guys, I guess, or whoever they are, who they say like, oh, the Chitauri, they're going to be ready to fight for you, and they establish that he's been promised that he'll be given Earth once the universe is given to Thanos or whatever, but that's it. That's really it. I mean, they don't really expand.
Origin story problem.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily origin story, just motivation problems. I mean, it's just it's clunky. It's weird, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited for Age of Ultron, because I mean, Ultron seems like he's going to be a much more developed character than Loki was as the villain in the Avengers.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Loki was fine. I thought he's just a classic power hungry psycho. He kind of has.
He's a jealous brother.
Yeah, I mean, he lacks a little bit of vision because he's just relying on these other dudes to bring him his whole army.
Well, and also Ultron creates vision.
Right.
He said he lacks vision.
I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
I love Avengers. This is my favorite movie so far of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. No offense to Captain America: Winter Soldier, because that is a very by a hair close second.
Okay. You meant the entire franchise then.
The entire universe.
It's my favorite of Phase 1, but I don't know about. I think I'd give the edge to either Winter Soldier or Guardians, but we'll talk about that next week.
Okay. Because Mike mentioned Captain America.
Right.
So,
okay.
The Avengers is my favorite, and like I said, it's very close first. Captain America is a very close second. I just love it because it's like one of the best team building movies I've ever seen. And next week we'll talk about how well Guardians did that as well.
I would say how Guardians tops it.
Oh, would you? Would you now?
Huh.
Yeah, I will. Wait. Just wait. Just wait and see.
Just you wait.
Just wait and see what I'm going to do with Guardians.
I don't know. I just I liked I liked the Avengers. I like the Avengers a little better still. But it's just awesome. I love the team building of it, and there's just so much friction amongst them throughout the first two acts, and then that third act, the way they come together is just perfect. It's I love it. I don't think it could be any better.
Absolutely, I totally agree with your sentiment, but I will say that it had some problems for me.
Me too. And the first time I saw it, I don't mean, man, I just feel like such a downer, and I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's a really great movie.
We've
really
established that we all love the movie. Yeah.
The first time I saw it at a midnight showing, and I was already tired, and of course I had to work the next day. And I was so tired watching this movie that just when it was over, you could hear the rumblings, you could hear the energy still in the crowd, and I was just like, man, I think Dark Knight Rises is going to be awesome.
Okay.
I felt like the energy of this movie was just like, okay, spoiler for next week. I fell asleep when we were watching The Dark World and Thor: The Dark World, and I mean, the first Thor kind of didn't do much for me in terms of pacing, and I've talked about my problems with the pacing of the Iron Man 2 and Iron Man and all that. But man, everything, like the way that the story unfolds in the Avengers is just so fluid, and it feels just so There's so
every
much
beat
there.
hits when it's supposed to.
Absolutely.
Every transition works when it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
It's so tight considering what they had to work with.
And
and
it's
like
impressive.
like every character gets ample screen time too, which is so difficult to achieve with something like this.
Well, some might argue that Hawkeye and Black Widow, Hawkeye especially, get kind of the short shrift.
A little bit, but they still managed to get him some development. I mean, despite the fact that he's under a spell for 2/3 of the movie, they have that heart to heart after he kind of comes out of it. He and Black Widow do, and that I think that actually they crammed a lot into that one scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was kind of on a much bigger scale, but it was the anti Iron Man 2 with all that kind of filling in with a bunch of mythology building stuff,
right?
And it really paid off well. It's just the lack of motivation. This is the thing I wanted to say, and then we can start wrapping this up soon. But Tiny, when you said that you liked Loki and because he was a power hungry, jealous guy or whatever, I was like in my head, I wanted to say like, yeah, so was Ironmonger, and so was Abomination, and so was Loki, and Thor, and so was Red Skull, and all that. But I mean, I'm being facetious, but the movies kind of follow the villain motivation in the Avengers wasn't up to par for me as a viewer. And those comparisons are easy to make because I feel like there wasn't much to work with in terms of him having a fully fledged, fully formed motivation. It's just he literally pops up into the middle of nowhere, like, okay, I'm gonna take over this world. It's just weird. I guess it's an extension of his existential crisis or his the revelations of his family and Thor, but just something about it just didn't really sit right with me. But,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah.
People love him though.
Yeah, they do.
People love him.
They do. And Tom Hiddleston is fantastic. He's absolutely awesome in the role. I just don't think the character is as pivotal to the universe as
they think he is.
True.
or want him to be.
Yeah.
So,
That's fair.
Yeah. So
predictions.
Whew.
Will Avengers 2 be better than Avengers 1? Will it make more money than Avengers 1? Will it be the highest grossing movie of all time until Star Wars comes out?
I don't know, and I don't know.
Yeah. It'll be fun. I don't want to build it up like it. I don't want to be on the hook for saying like, oh, it's going to blow Avengers out of the water, but my expectations are well managed. I'm just looking forward to it being a fun time. And
the lukewarm reviews so far are worrisome, not in terms of my enjoyment, but in terms of how much money it might make.
Reception, yeah.
In terms of, because Joss Whedon's done after this. He's not going to be doing anymore. Yeah. So I'm hoping that it's a good, I guess, send off for him for the franchise. I guess. And it's funny because after the Winter Soldier, if Age of Ultron isn't up to par, we have Infinity Wars Part 1 and 2 to look forward to, and I'm sure that the Russo brothers are going to be fantastic in it.
Oh, of course they are. Man, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait.
Word.
Yeah. Parting thought, did you guys see that that's going to be filming for like more
9 months.
Almost a year. Yeah, 9 months.
Yep.
It's going to be they're going to finish Civil War, and then there's going to be like a break. And I think Chris Evans talked about this, and then he's going right into Infinity War for 9 months.
And then Chris Evans is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it sounds like he's ready to be done.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But he's a soldier. God Damn it. Anyway, so
He's a captain.
he's
He's my captain.
He can be my captain any day. He can lead
All
my
right.
ship. All right.
all right. So that's it for our retrospective of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and come back next week. We will be back with our thoughts on Phase 2, including our review of Avengers Age of Ultron, which we're all going to see this week, except for, me and Tyner are going to see it Thursday, and Mike's going to see it on Friday because he has a Beatles cover band to go see. And so, yeah, so thank you for listening, guys, and we'll throw it to the pre-recorded outros. Any parting thoughts?
I don't think so.
No. Looking forward to Age of Ultron.
Same.
Enough said. Thanks for listening, true believers.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.
So Motion City Soundtrack is coming to Indy.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. It's their Commit This to Memory 10th anniversary thing. So,
nice.
Yeah, so like I was super bummed that they weren't going to come here for the tour, and then I saw that, and like my immediate thought was like, Justin Pierre must have listened to the podcast and then decided to extend the tour to come to Indianapolis.
He probably did.
Probably, he said he would listen. So
You think he did?
No, probably not. But do you think I think that he listened, or that he extended the tour to come to Indianapolis for my benefit?
Do you think that he listened?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. It sucked because like I'd messaged them about I messaged Junk Show Cinema about doing the Oscars episode with us, and then but I mean it's like right in the middle of his tour. So obviously like I didn't get like I was glad that I got to hear back from him, and like he was all receptive to it, but I mean, in the middle of a tour, it would be surprising to have him.
Yeah.
Who's this?
Justin Pierre from Motion City Soundtrack, which is going to be at Old National Center on August 2nd, and I'm going to buy my tickets on Friday, and I'm going to go with probably Lawson and his wife.
Cool.
Yeah.
As always, thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. Thank you to Loud Like for providing our awesome opening theme music. Their first EP is called Mistakes We Must Make and features our theme song and Eclipse of Events. Please head over to iTunes and download their album. While you're there, make sure to give us a rate and a review. It helps us climb the podcast charts, and we really appreciate feedback. Speaking of feedback, please like our Facebook page at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow each of us on Twitter. You can find me, Tiny, at ObsessiveTiny, Matt is at ObsessiveViewer, and Mike is at I am Mike White. You can also check out the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we, but mostly Matt, review movies, TV shows, and comment on the industry as a whole. While you're web surfing, please head over to our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, where we review books and comment on the ever-evolving world of reading. If you're philosophically curious, please go explore my side project, the Secular Perspective Podcast, which is a show that explores the concept of faith, religion, and existence from a secular perspective. If you have any thoughts on the podcast or suggestions for future episodes, you can also email us individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or email the podcast directly at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Thanks for joining us today, and please come back.